It really is a wonderful life, and you realize that, especially after watching this movie. Now, if you're here, I'm going to kind of make a big assumption and assume that most of you, if not all of you, have seen the movie. But if you haven't, I'll give you a quick rundown of what happens. So It's a Wonderful Life follows the main character, George Bailey, as he goes through life. You know, when he's a child, he wants to be an explorer, an adventurer, and life doesn't really work out the way he has it planned. And he does have it planned. He ends up saving his little brother and losing his hearing. He saves a drugstore owner from poisoning people with pills. He saves his family business until his brother gets back from college to take it back over. And then his brother does get back, and he's not going to take it over because he has a great job lined up and a wife, so he doesn't do that. But things also go pretty good for George. He gets a wife in Mary, a girl he had a crush on when he was, starting out in his family business. She was also in his life when he was younger, but he didn't really have eyes for her. And, they get married. They have 4 children. And they buy a rickety old house. And Mary fixes it up. So, things also go good for George. But in the town, there was a mean old man named Mr. Potter. And Mr. Potter pretty much controls most of the wealth in the town. He keeps a lot of the people poor by putting them in slums and low-income housing, and he charges them insane amounts of rent and interest, so they never get out of it. And that's where George's family business comes in, the building and loan office. They give people an opportunity to get out of Mr. Potter's clutches and to get away from that life and create something of their own. So, the Bailey family is really respected around town. George especially because, he's always sticking his neck up for people. An example of this being, there's a point in the movie where, the Great Depression hits, because this does take place in around the 40s or 30s, I think. And, it hits, all the banks are going crazy, people are going crazy. And the only 2 people in town that are left standing are Potter and the Bailey Building and Loan. Potter, obviously, because he has the money, he'll be fine. He was giving people 50 cents on the dollar. And George, he couldn't do that. So he was about to go on his honeymoon. And instead of doing that, they used the money to keep the business in business. By giving people what they needed to get them by until the recession was over. And it worked. They were able to stay open, and they avoided going out of business. So George gets to keep being a pain in Mr. Potter's neck. But as things go on, life seems to be getting better for George. The war hits, and his brother becomes a war hero. He, of course, stayed back because of his bum ear. But he still did his part back home. And when his brother's coming back, he's so excited. He's in the newspaper. He's this and that. And George's uncle that's, works with him at the building and loan, he's at the bank to deposit money. And he's bragging about his nephew and how he's going to be a war hero and this and that. And he's depositing $8,000. Just so happens he accidentally leaves the $8,000 in the newspaper he gave back to Mr. Potter as he was bragging to him about his nephew. And he loses it, which turns into a big spiral. Because he lost it, and George tries to help him find it, they just can't find it. And, of course, Mr. Potter's not going to return that money. So they are pretty screwed. They go all over town. They can't find it. George says, this is bad. We have a bank examiner here. He's going to know the books are off. One of us is going to jail. It's $8,000. We don't just have that kind of money to back up. So George goes to Mr. Potter, tries to reason with him. He doesn't know that he has it, but he's still he's pretty much asking him for a loan. And Mr. Potter basically says, womp womp, get lost. I'm going to call the cops. There's going to be a warrant out for your arrest, which there is one. So, George has all this on his shoulders, so he goes to Martini's bar and has a drink. And he's thinking and he's thinking and he doesn't know what to do. And he remembers something Mr. Potter told him a few scenes before, which is that, George was talking about his life insurance policy. He's like, you could take this and I can, it'll be $500 and that'll cover my down payment for the loan maybe. And Mr. Potter says, that's a joke. You'd be worth more to me. You'd be worth more dead than alive. And George is really thinking about that at the bar because he's like, you know what? He's right. I'd be worth more dead than alive. My life insurance policy would kick in. My wife and kids would have something for when I'm gone. I'm a failure. I haven't really made that much money. And when I have, I've lost it. And it hasn't been working out. And yeah, I have a wife and kids, but maybe they'd be better off without me. So George goes to a bridge, ready to kill himself. And this is where Clarence, the angel, comes in. And yes, I did say angel, because at the beginning of the movie, God is talking to Joseph, and he's saying, there's a man on earth that needs our help. His name's George Bailey. And they're wondering who to send, who's going to go help this George Bailey. And of course, Joseph suggests Clarence because he hasn't gotten his wings yet. It's been 200 years. No wings. So before Clarence can be sent down, they call to him and they tell him the story of George Bailey, which is what we've been watching up to this point. So anyways, Clarence crosses paths with George. He walks on the bridge and he jumps off. He jumps right off. And George is like, he's lost. He's befuddled. So he jumps in after him because the guy's yelling for help. Clarence needs help. So George jumps in, saves Clarence. He's trying to explain to him that he's his guardian angel, and he's an angel. And the tower keeper, whatever the position is, the guy that was in the watchtower by the water, believes him, and he gets freaked out, and he runs off. But George doesn't believe it. He's like, you know what, we'll go back to Martini's, get this sorted out. They go back to Martini's, and it's not Martini's, it's Luigi's. And Luigi, who George used to know, or he knows, doesn't know George. He's never heard of him. Nobody else in there has. And then the drugstore owner that George saved from killing somebody walks in. Only he didn't save him from killing him because George asked to never exist. So because George never existed, the drugstore keeper sent the pills, the bad pills, killed people, and went to jail for 20 years. And now he's homeless and panhandling, and he's being made a mockery of in the bar, and he's just living a terrible life. Impact number 1 that George has had. So then George basically leaves there. He goes looking for his car, doesn't see his car, runs into town, finds a lot of his old friends. Violet is a girl he's had a crush on here and there, and she's definitely had a crush on him. Only she also doesn't know him, and she is getting arrested. And we saw earlier in the movie that he was actually giving Violet money to get out of town, to start a better life for herself. So 2 very different Violets here. Then he sees his buddy who's a taxi driver, and he doesn't know him, so the taxi driver calls the cop to follow him because he's paranoid that this guy is a schizo freak. As he drives George home, they get there, and there's nobody home. Actually, the home is abandoned. It looks the exact same as it was when they first bought it, before Mary ever even fixed it up. So George is confused. He's lost. He's scared. And the cop gets there, and he tries to arrest him, and, George tries talking to him, but they don't know who George is. They do not recognize him. They have no clue. So George is really scared. And he asks for Clarence's help because I guess now that, he believes that Clarence, what he was saying. So Clarence shows up, distracts the cop, and then he disappears in plain sight. George goes back into town. He sees, all the debauchery, the gambling, the strip shows. Just the town is very different. Very different. And the new name of the town is actually Pottersville. So that just shows you, So then George looks for his wife, Mary. and he finds her at a local library. She's not married, no kids. She's just single, a single library keeper. And he scares the hell out of her. He chases her to a bar, and he's trying to convince her. He's pleading that she recognize him, and she doesn't. So he runs away again. He escapes the cops, runs away back to the bridge. And this is a really emotional part where he starts to cry, and he begs God to give him his life back. Like he realizes now what he did, and he wants his old life back. And God seems to grant that wish, because the cop pulls up again, and you think, oh God, he's going to get arrested. But then, nope, he calls him George. He recognizes him, and George is so happy to hear his name. So happy that he runs all the way home. He sees his car, but he doesn't get in it. He keeps running on foot through the town, yelling, "Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, building alone! Merry Christmas, Mr. Potter! Merry Christmas, everyone!" And he keeps saying it until he gets to his house, where he finds his kids. He hugs them tight, kisses them, but he's looking for his wife. And the bank estimator and the person with the warrant out for his arrest are there, but he could care less. He wants his wife and kids. And Mary walks in, and he gives her a big hug and kiss finally, and they're reunited. And she has something to tell him. She was out getting people's help. She told the town what happened and that George Bailey needs their help, and they agreed. So she sets up the table in the living room and brings George over by the tree, and the whole town starts pouring in, dumping money on the table. Money, coins, somebody gives his daughter a watch. And basically, he gets more than enough because his friend, who became a big shot business owner down in New York, sends him $25,000. And George is overwhelmed. You know, he had no idea. And then the movie ends with a bell ringing on the tree, and George's daughter saying, "Teacher said every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings." He says, "Yeah, that's right. You are right." Because George is holding the book, Tom Sawyer, which Clarence was reading throughout he mentioned throughout the movie. And in the beginning page of the book, he has a little note that says, "Thanks for the wings, Clarence." That's basically a Cliff Notes version of the movie. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but like I said, I'm banking on the fact that most of you have seen it. But either way, I couldn't get into this video without at least giving that little rundown. I wanted to talk about this movie today because I think it is a fantastic movie. And my favorite movie of all time kind of rotates, but this is definitely in that rotation. And I watched this the other day with my wife, and it got me pretty emotional for multiple reasons. The first being the message it sends, you know, having gratitude and being thankful even when you think there's nothing to be thankful for. I mean, the part where he's running through the town yelling "Merry Christmas," and the part where he's breaking down in the bar, and where he's being given all the money on the table. I mean, it's just fantastic. And I think it's a very tricky, movie to watch, especially if you're young. Because I watched it when I was younger, and I didn't get the same impression or effect. But, you know, George is a guy who has done, right his whole life. And you would think, wow, a guy like that, he deserves no trouble. But honestly, guys, that's not how life is. That's not a fact of life. You could do all the right things in the world. You could be a great person, never hurt anyone, never hurt a fly, and you'll still be dealt a shit hand. And that doesn't mean that you're hated by God or some whatever force you believe in, and that doesn't mean the universe hates you. That's just life. Sometimes good people go through hell, and bad people who you think would be getting the treatment you're getting get the easiest path possible. But I'm telling you, there's a reason the bad people get the easy path. It's because it's going to catch up to them later in life or beyond life. Easier paths are easier for a reason. It's easy to do, the wrong thing, or to be selfish, or to be a bad person. It's hard to be a good person. And this movie shows you that George did the right thing his whole life, pretty much. He gave up a lot of the stuff he wanted to do. And at first you're like, God, I feel bad. But then when you look at it, the way George sees it at the end of the movie, he has a beautiful wife. He has 4 kids. He has a home full of, stuff that his wife has done. She fixed up the entire house. He has everything he could ever hope for. And, I mean, that's all a man can really ask for. It's when you start to ask for more that you get greedy. Is George the richest in town? Financially? No, he's not. And clearly, especially after the $8,000 loss, he's definitely not. But look at what he has around him. He has friends. He has a family. He has people who love him. That's rich. That is true wealth. And it sounds cliche or cringy, whatever. But it's true. It just is true. I mean, there's a lot of things money can't buy. And my 2 things, I don't think money can buy time, obviously. You'll never get time back. And money cannot buy love. You cannot buy love. Love is something that you make, you work for, you foster it. And I think George, realizes how lucky he is at the end. And I think it's a good message for the world, Work your life away, do what you want, or don't. There's more to life. And I stand in that camp that there is more to life than work. I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen guys who work nonstop, and then they brag about having this much money or this big of a house or this many cars, or they don't have any debt, but their family, they don't really know their family, or their family doesn't really like them or to be around them. That's sad. And then I know guys who don't have as much money, but I'll tell you what they do have. Their kids are excited to see them every time they come home. Their wife loves them. They love their wife. I mean, they have a connection that can't be broken, no matter how much or how little money they make. And that's the message that I think this movie supplies really well, is that, it's a wonderful life, not because of the things that you could buy or the money you can make. It's a wonderful life because of the people you have around you, or the people you have in your life. And not to get too personal, but this movie kind of hit home for me, because I've gone through some struggles, and I was kind of in George's spot where I was thinking, I don't make that much money compared to this person or that person, and I don't have this and I don't have that, and my wife deserves better, and maybe she'd be better off if I just, I'd be worth more dead than alive, to put it best. I mean, they put it best in the movie. So yeah, I was having those same thoughts where I'm like, maybe it's true. Maybe I'd be worth more dead than alive. And that was before I rewatched this movie. But then I rewatched it and I got really emotional, because it's just such a wrong and silly way to think. If you really have a relationship that's good with your partner or whoever, and you think they'd be better off without you, but having more money, you're wrong. You're just wrong. And I feel like an idiot for even feeling like that, but I do want to be honest, because I think it relates to this movie, and that's why I wanted to make this video, because I've gone through the struggle, and I'm sure a lot of other people have. And I think a lot of people need this movie, or movies like this, or whatever, whatever connects with you, really. I'm not saying this movie connects with you, but that's a good thing about movies, and that's the way I watch movies. I don't watch it from a film student perspective, where objectively this film has done this. No, if I like a movie, I like a movie. That's the good thing about movies and music and TV shows. If it connects with you, it connects with you. That's beautiful. If not, no big deal, But this movie, especially around the holiday season, is an important one. I think it reminds people the importance of the holiday. While you're worrying about buying 20 gifts and you're working overtime so you can get that new car or whatever, or so you can flex a new house or a bigger house or something, this and that. Working is great. Providing is obviously important and great. But there is a line. And I don't think that was the main message of this movie, but that's just one takeaway I got is like, there's more to life. You have to build relationships. Um, you have to have that around you because that's so much more valuable. And there's going to be people I'm going to be missing this holiday season because they're no longer with us. But just to have the people I do, I'm very lucky. And frankly, I'm not deserving of a lot of their love and their support and who they are. But that's besides the point. I have it, and I feel very happy and very lucky. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about this movie because I think it's a beautiful one. If you haven't seen it, well, sorry, I kind of spoiled it already, but you should still check it out. If you have, let me know how it's affected you or impacted you, because I know I'm not the only one this movie has impacted. And until next time, I'll see you guys.